One of the strangest woodland plants in eastern North America, Arisaema triphyllum, which is saying something because forests already contain parasitic fungi, exploding seed pods, and trees that communicate underground like anxious neighbors gossiping through plumbing. The basic identity of Jack-in-the-Pulpit is a native woodland aroid to the family Arisaceae, meaning it's related to philodendron, skunk cabbage, monstera, peace lilies, caladiums, and other arums. That relationship becomes obvious once you recognize the flower structure. The flower is actually made up of a spathe, the hooded outer structure, and a spadix, the central spike inside. The spadix is the jack, the hooded spathe is the pulpit, hence the name Jack-in-the-Pulpit. The species name, triphyllum, means three-leaved, referring to the typical three-part leaf arrangement. Its native range is usually eastern North America, in rich deciduous forests, floodplains, moist ravines, woodland slopes, and creek systems. It especially thrives in rich, humus-heavy soils with seasonal moisture and spring sunlight before canopy closure. Jack-in-the-Pulpit belongs to an ancient plant lineage. Aroids evolved unusual pollination systems very early, and many specialize in trapping insects, producing heat, mimicking decay odors, funneling pollinators, and manipulating insect behavior in general. Arisaema species across the world became masters of insect deception architecture. The hooded spathe protects reproductive organs, creates a chamber, guides insect movement, and controls pollinator escape routes. Some related species are even more elaborate, but Arisaema triphyllum already shows the evolutionary blueprint. Its pollination strategy is where things become deeply weird. Jack-in-the-Pulpit is primarily pollinated by fungus gnats, small flies, and tiny woodland insects. The plant emits subtle odors that attract these insects into the floral chamber. Once inside, insects slide downward, escape becomes difficult, and pollen transfer occurs. Male and female flowers also function differently. Male plants usually allow insects to escape after pollen pickup. Female plants often trap insects permanently, meaning some insects die inside the flower. Like tiny Gothic cathedrals of ecological manipulation, which is honestly very on brand for the forest understory. Probably one of the most fascinating features is its sex-changing life cycle. Jack-in-the-Pulpit can change sex over its lifetime. Young or energy-poor plants usually produce male flowers, while older and larger plants with enough stored energy can produce female flowers. Why? Because producing berries and seeds costs vastly more energy than producing pollen, so the plant effectively decides whether it has enough underground reserves to afford reproduction this year. And if resources drop, the plant may revert back to male later. That's called sequential hermaphroditism. As far as toxicity and chemistry goes, Jack-in-the-Pulpit contains calcium oxalate crystals called raphides. These are macroscopic needle-like crystals. When plant tissue is chewed by something like an herbivore or a human, crystals embed themselves in mouth and throat tissues. Then intense burning occurs, swelling and pain may follow after. The plant evolved this defense to discourage herbivory behavior, essentially to stop things from eating it. The raw corm especially can be extremely irritating. Symptoms may include burning pain, swelling, difficulty speaking, and drooling. It is not usually considered one of the deadliest North American plants, but it is highly unpleasant raw. Despite the toxicity, many indigenous peoples developed preparation methods to use the plant carefully. Uses included food after extensive drying and cooking, medicinal preparations, topical applications, and even respiratory remedies in some traditions. Drying or heating breaks down much of the irritating chemistry. This pattern appears repeatedly in ethnobotany, humans learning to neutralize plant defenses through processing. The same principles exist with cassava cyanide removal, pokeweed preparation, acorn tannin leaching, certain toxic beans, and with cycads. Human survival history is basically what if we process this poison differently. As far as life cycle goes, Jack-in-the-Pulpit is a classic woodland spring ephemeral associate. In early spring, the sunlight reaches the forest floor. While canopy trees are still bare and moisture is abundant, the plant rapidly starts growing. Later on, the forest canopy closes, light levels collapse, and summer heat rises. The plant shifts energy to underground. By late summer, bright red berry clusters appear. These berries attract birds and mammals, aid seed dispersal, and create one of the plant's most recognizable late-season forms. Eventually, foliage dies back and underground corms persist through the winter. Jack-in-the-Pulpit is deeply tied to mature deciduous forests, fungal soil networks, spring moisture cycles, insect communities, and understory stability. It often coexists with trilliums, bloodroot, mayapple, trout lily, Solomon seal, ferns, and other beautiful spring plants. These woodland communities evolved together over long timescales, and forest destruction severely fragments these relationships. As far as folklore and naming goes, the plant reflects colonial Christian imagery. The jack were the preachers, and the pulpit was the church lectern. Other historical names included Indian turnip, bog onion, and wake robin. Indian turnip referred to the corm's historical preparation and use, while wake robin was also applied to other spring woodland plants and may reference birds returning in spring. Compared to plants like tobacco, tea, or foxglove, Jack-in-the-Pulpit never became a global commodity or empire-building crop. It stayed mostly regional, woodland-associated, and deeply tied to eastern North American ecosystems. That actually makes its human history more intimate and ethnobotanical rather than industrial. It's the history of indigenous ecological knowledge, settler encounters, folk medicine, survival knowledge, botanical curiosity, and eventual ornamental fascination. Long before European colonization, many indigenous peoples across eastern North America knew the plant well, which is important because Jack-in-the-Pulpit was not viewed merely poisonous, it was viewed as a plant requiring knowledge. That distinction matters enormously in ethnobotany. Many indigenous groups recognize the irritating raw corm, how preparation altered it, seasonal timing, medicinal potential, and habitat associations. The Cherokee, Iroquois, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwa, Meskwaki, Potawatomi, and other groups throughout its range were all documented using or recognizing the plant. Sorry if I butchered any of those names, feel free to correct me in the comments. Uses varied regionally because overall ethnobotany is never one monolithic tradition. One of the most widespread colonial names was Indian turnip. The name reflects European observation of indigenous use of the underground corm. The corm resembles a small turnip-like structure underground, though raw consumption is intensely irritating due to calcium oxalate crystals. Various indigenous preparations could have involved drying, roasting, prolonged processing, or grinding. Drying could have been especially important because it reduces the intensity of the raphides. European settlers often encountered the plant without understanding proper preparation and learned very quickly why ethnobotanical knowledge matters. A recurring theme in North American history has been colonists discovering local plants that aren't all beginner-friendly. Different indigenous traditions use the plant medicinally in carefully controlled ways. Historical ethnobotanical records describe uses involving respiratory complaints, congestion, topical applications, stimulant-like preparations, rheumatism, and external irritant uses. Some preparations intentionally utilize the plant's irritating qualities in very small controlled contexts, so controlled irritation as treatment, which before modern pharmacology, medicine often relied on plants producing strong physiological responses: sweating, vomiting, stimulation, numbness, irritation, or sedation. Many treatments now would absolutely fail modern FDA approval in under 6 minutes, but some still work surprisingly well anyway. European settlers entering eastern forests encountered Jack-in-the-Pulpit regularly because it thrives in rich hardwood forests, stream valleys, old-growth understories, and moist woodland soils. Naturalists and herbalists became fascinated by it because its flower structure looked bizarre. It caused dramatic irritation. It had been known by indigenous use, and it appeared abundant in some forests. 19th century botanical literature often described it with a mixture of admiration, caution, religious metaphor, and a fascination with curious American flora. Remember, at this time, many European botanists considered North American forests exotic. Today, people see eastern forests as ordinary background scenery while driving towards chain restaurants. Historically, they were viewed as immense, unfamiliar biological worlds. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Jack-in-the-Pulpit entered various streams of American folk medicine. Preparations appeared in herbal manuals, frontier medicine, eclectic medicine traditions, and rural remedy collections. Claims included uses for bronchial irritation, hoarseness, cough, tuberculosis symptoms, and respiratory stimulation. Now, historical medicine use does not automatically mean that it was safe or effective by modern standards, but still many medicinal traditions developed from generations of observation and experimentation. During the 1800s, interest in natural history exploded. Jack-in-the-Pulpit became attractive to botanists, illustrators, gardeners, collectors, and naturalists because it looked unusual even compared to woodland wildflowers. Victorian naturalists in general especially loved the strange floral structures, symbolic interpretations, pollination oddities, and curious adaptations. The plant's pulpit-like appearance fit perfectly into the era's habit of assigning elaborate symbolic meanings to flowers. Jack-in-the-Pulpit accumulated associations with mystery, woodland spirituality, hidden things, forest solitude, old-growth woods, and spring renewal. Its hooded appearance naturally encouraged anthropomorphic interpretations. Some folklore traditions link strange woodland plants in general to spirits, fairy folklore, hidden forest forces, and sacred spring landscapes, though Jack-in-the-Pulpit itself never became quite as heavily mythologized as mandrake or deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna. In modern times, Jack-in-the-Pulpit became important within native plant gardening, woodland restoration conservation, horticulture, and ecological landscaping. Interest increased because people began recognizing spring ephemeral ecology, native pollinator relationships, forest biodiversity loss, and the importance of understory plants in general. Today, it's appreciated as an ornamental native, an ecological indicator species, a teaching plant for woodland ecology, and an ethnobotanical species. It also became popular among native plant enthusiasts because it spreads slowly, looks exotic, tolerates shade, and changes dramatically seasonally. Jack-in-the-Pulpit represents something larger, though, the relationship between humans and difficult plants. Not just edible crops, not just obvious medicines, but plants that required observation, caution, patience, seasonal understanding, and ecological familiarity. It reflects an older style of human ecological literacy, where people knew forests intimately enough to distinguish what could nourish, what could harm, what could heal, and what required respect and preparation. That knowledge used to be survival. Now many people can identify poison ivy while carrying computers capable of accessing humanity's collective knowledge in their pockets. Thanks for watching this first full episode here on the channel. I honestly appreciate you spending the time wandering through the woods with me to learn about one of North America's strangest native plants. There are a lot of species and stories I want to cover in future episodes, from toxic plants and medicinal herbs to woodland wildflowers, carnivorous plants, ethnobotany, and the weird evolutionary strategies plants have developed over millions of years just to survive. The goal is to keep making longer form episodes like this regularly, hopefully every Friday or at least every other week. We'll see how it goes as the channel grows and I keep building the project. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe, stick around, and let me know what plants you'd want to see covered next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.